Seth, you can hear us at home?
I can hear you. Yep.
All right.
Seth, you can hear me at home?
I'd like to begin this committee of the whole meeting by recognizing that the CVRD. I'd like to begin this committee of the whole meeting by recognizing that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Quw'utsun, Malahat, Subaxat, Halalt, Penelakut, Semanis, Laxon, Pakachan, Didadat, and Patchdat nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. And with the quorum being present, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Our first item of business is approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director McGonigal. Any discussion? All in favor? And opposed? Unopposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to the adoption of the minutes. We have before us the minutes from the committee of the whole meeting of April 23rd, 2025. Would someone like to move that these be adopted? Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion? All in favor? And opposed? Unopposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to the public input period. Public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the committee considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes where the speaker is welcome to comment on any items on the agenda for a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that are or have been the subject of a public hearing. Input from the community is valued and appreciated, and we request that input is presented in a friendly and respectful manner. Your cooperation in maintaining a safe, respectful, and orderly environment is greatly appreciated. So I'll turn to the gallery and ask if anyone would like to step up to the podium to provide public input. Sir, if you could state your name and address. Yeah, just hit the button.
That button. All right, there we go. Yeah, hi. Dave Monday with the Shawnigan Basin Society. As you probably know, Basin Society is a strategic partner of the CVRD, so we're encouraging and speaking to item R4, or the which is the environmental team is going to do a presentation on water conservation and water stewardship. So we're looking forward to that. We are willing to help with that, certainly in South Cowichan, if not elsewhere. We now have a boat on the lake, and we can take part in sampling programs. And also, there is a note about education, and we are connected, at least in South Cowichan, into the school system. And we have retired teachers that are managing that program. So if there's any presentation that could be made by the CVRD, we'd be interested in helping with that. So I look forward to the presentation, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to step forward for public input? You could state your name and address.
Yes, thank you. I hadn't planned to, but I would like to. My name is Joyce Benson, Drinkwater Road, North Cowichan, and I'm here for the delegation presentation this morning by our Cowichan, having been a municipal councillor in the past and sitting as the liaison with our Cowichan Community Health Network, also working now with the homeless through Life on Wheels downtown Duncan, knowing the situations that are quite dramatic and serious. I would just like to say I'm very thankful that people are coming forward from community, because the efforts by community to try to help make this better have been very challenging over the years. And when the OPS overdose protection site opened, that first day I was there at the corner at the roundabout with a Visi vest on before 8 in the morning, and I spent my entire day except for 20 minutes there helping the students from the schools in the neighborhood to feel at least comfortable, and being a woman and standing there just to help them feel safe, because of what that site has brought to the neighborhood has only gotten way worse. And we know a lot of that has had to do with our higher levels of government's decisions to do with drug use. I've been in that OPS site with different people that I help at times, just even for a few minutes, and they're handing out all kinds of paraphernalia to keep them on the drugs. So I'm saying this is so serious. I have a busy day today, but I want to hear what is being said, and I hope we all listen and we take steps to make it better, because it's our children and their children's future generations that are involved, and we know that it matters to them as well. And sadly, many of the people that we help at Life on Wheels are relatives of friends and families in our community. one of the people that sat here for a long time's nephew, different people. These are our relatives and friends that are struggling and suffering with homelessness and addictions and dying on our streets. And it's heartbreaking. And let's work together to make it happen for everybody's benefit. Bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to step forward for public input? All right, we'll now move on. Just before we go to delegations, I just want to recognize alternate director Tatum, who's going to be joining us this morning, and perhaps this afternoon as well. All right. So we'll now move on to delegations. Director Morrison?
Thank you, Chair. Apparently our delegation might be slightly over the 10.
Yeah, sorry, just give me a sec.
Right,
Okay,
red is good.
Go for it now.
I understand our delegation might need a moment or two longer than 10 minutes, so I would move that that be made to happen.
Move, seconded by Director Segal. All in favor? And opposed? Not opposed, motion carries. So we'll now move on to our delegation. I'd like to welcome Cindy Lise from Our Couch and Communities Health Network to discuss the yearly update of accomplishments. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I am Cindy Lise, the regional facilitator for Our Couch and Communities Health Network, and I am so honored to be here today. I would also like to say, Itzkapip, Atanakoyal, Tani Atu, Kawatsan Tamauch, and that we are gathered here on the Cowichan land. So I get to tell you about our year-end report. And just start by acknowledging the CVRD. And so for many of you, I don't know if you know that we are a non-funded function of the CVRD, and we have been a part of you since 2009. I'm just going to... Okay, come on. Why are we not scrolling? There we go. And we are a conduit to Island Health, local governments, First Nations, and community. And now, well established throughout the region, we've moved into a phase of maintaining the good work that's underway and enhancing and expanding our impact through collective impact, because the power of networks is more than what we could have ever imagined to become. So we have been here, as I said, since 2012, or since 2009. I have been your facilitator since 2012. So I've been around for a long time. And many of you have been a designate or connected to the health network. And so before I go any further, and this includes behind me, in front of me, and around me, I want you to put up your hand if you have worked with Our Couch and Communities Health Network in some way, shape, or form. Awesome. It just goes to show you how deeply ingrained we are in the community. Some of the things that the Health Network has contributed to over the past many years include your age-friendly programs and studies. We have been the facilitator of the Cowichan Regional Airshed Roundtable, and now that has shifted into climate action. We've been a part of the new recruitment and retention work through Economic Development Cowichan. We've contributed to your child care strategy, emergency planning, extreme weather shelter, have been one of the planning partners around the village. And most recently, soon to come to you is a report on the Cowichan, Our Cowichan Health Survey. All of you have received a copy of our year-end report, and it goes deep down into the trenches of what we've accomplished. But for today, I just want to pick some of the highlights and share the impact that they've had on our community. I would also like to remind you that this is a great opportunity when you've got nothing else to do to go to the Our Cowichan website and do a little dig around, because there is a lot on there, and some of our collective work is also housed there in our region. In addition, the Our Cowichan Communities Health Profile is prominent on the front page of our website, and that is a report on the social determinants of health across our region. So regardless of whether you're coming from Lake Cowichan, Ladysmith, the South End, the Core, you can find information about our community that can help guide grant writing, decision making, and policy development. So when we started, there was about 12 people, and we actually sat in this room with the first members of our Cowichan. Now, today, we have literally hundreds, and I estimate 400 unique community partners that work with us across this region. And some of the places where you'll find those partners are at the Our Cowichan Health Network table, the Cowichan Community Action Team, which is the table that has now over 200 unique partners addressing challenges around the poison drug pandemic and mental health. EPIC, the Elder Care Partnership in Cowichan. The Cowichan Youth at Home has just, it's one of those ones that has gone through expanding and like lungs, breathing in and breathing out. And now, just recently, we have over 90 community partners working around supporting youth initiatives. Play Cowichan and physical literacy and getting our kids active. And we've also been at the helm of the Our Cowichan Small Grants Initiative that has handed out probably $180,000 in small grants for a multitude of projects over the past 10 years or so. We bring people together, and by doing so, we build trust, relationships, understanding, dialogue, and a way of working together that we have not been able to do historically when we are working in isolation. And this is just some of the photos from 2024 in various places where we got together. Come on. There we go. These photos that I'm sharing with you here, probably some of my proudest moments of being at the helm of this work. So we know that there is a challenge with unhoused people in our region, but some of those unhoused people are actually our youth. And so for a number of years, there has been a small group, and this is our planning group that's there, that have been fighting day and night to find the resources to help our kids who, for whatever reasons, are out on our streets. And so through the power of partnership and passion and fight, in 2024, we have just been able to open a youth shelter for our young people. And we know that this will save lives because in our process of doing this work, we kept losing our young people. And so through the dream of some work that was done through Social Planning Cowichan and us holding on to the vision of young people, our kids now have a home that has beds and bedside tables and a living room and a kitchen and lamps and also, through the power of Coldest Night of the Year, for many of you who have walked that, raising funds, and through the Misha Weiss Foundation, this is Guido Weiss and myself here, we own that home. And we own a van that helps do outreach into your communities for young people who need care. And so $450,000 came from the Misha Weiss Foundation, and over $4 million for the pilot project for Yes to our community. In the collective of our youth services, we have brought together over 50, 60 partners earlier this year, and we are creating a path of connection for youth in our community. We now have the Health and Wellness Center that's at Cowichan Senior Secondary, and the ICY, the Integrated Child and Youth Care Team, that is supporting youth and integrating around mental health. And so we're working together in ways that just really make us proud, and it takes many, many community partners to be able to do that. A fun one that we have here is that the Health Network has been one of your stewards of the Airshed Roundtable since 2016. And working with Keith Lawrence and your team here, we had many conversations about the environment is so much more than the Airshed strategy. And so in December, we were able to bring together over 150 partners and participants who are doing on-the-ground climate resiliency, mitigation, impact, and initiatives in our region for 2 full days of learning about each other through the climate action gathering. It was grounded in First Nations history and culture and ways of being, and it is helping us bring together our resiliency as a region. And so we came together to learn and unite and build stronger relationships. And as a result of this gathering, we are now supporting the development of a collective impact initiative around climate for our region. And here's your team. There's your CVRD folks. There's Keith and Katie at the helm, and Sandra from Social Planning Cowichan and the Cowichan Cultural Connections work, Fernanda from Island Health, and then a colleague, Dave from Thetis Island. That's what it takes. And below it, it's in your report. But just so much richness came out of that gathering together that we can build on moving forward. And we thank the CVRD for support and funding for that. So coming to the close of this, we receive a small service grant from Island Health. And up until 2024, all of this work was done on $80,000 a year. All of this work. One staff person, $80,000 a year, and a mighty community. In 2024, we had a bump in our funding, and we got a top-up fund as well. So on $172,000, with all of the collaboration and partnership, we were able, through the Health Network, to bring in over $4,604,000 in resources to this community. And I just want to say that we can't do this without each other. And so, here we go. Years of relationship building, trust, shared learning, aligned visions, we can change our ways of working together. And at the network, we like to say it's not what we do, it's how we do it that makes a difference. And we are not done yet. There is so much more to come, so many more years to work together, and we really look forward to working alongside you. And in closing, if any of our CVRD representatives who have been assigned to the Health Network want to share their thoughts about what it means to them to be a part of us, I would welcome your voice. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of you today.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Lise. I'm going to turn to the committee and ask if there's any questions for our presenter. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Cindy. Good stuff. I think the thing that worries me the most, and I'm glad you got the 4.6 million, because one of the things that has always been very difficult is grant writing. And it's probably one of the most difficult things, and I've heard this from more than one organisation. Just to get there, you need a specialist who understands the system. Is there anything that we can do about changing that? I know there has to be safeguards, of course you do, but why is it so cumbersome?
Because you get one-time only grants and you have to prove that it's new and all of those things. But what I can tell you about grant writing that we've learned through the power of network is that if we are working together as a community, let's say youth, I'll just pick that because I shared that with you today, and we have leaders who support youth, and we're all together and we're able to say, what are some of the priorities for our region? For example, the shelter. The shelter was a priority. We all agreed, we all aligned, we all worked together, and we lobbied together, and we wrote a grant together. And that's how we get the funding in our community. When we're doing one-offs, it's hard work, But when we are aligned, and we're doing the same thing with the Elder Care Partnership, we come together, we set priorities, we identify the best host agency, and we work together to write a grant that is effective for our community, and we get the funds.
Good. Thank you, Cindy. And I see Bob Days in the background there. Bob, thank you.
Director Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Cindy, for this presentation. I should say, Ms. Lise.
All good.
Sorry. For the presentation, but for all of the work that you and the rest of the health network do, because I sit in as a representative from North Cowichan, as you know, and it's really fascinating to see just the tendrils and how far they extend and the amount of things that you get done. I wanted to ask you a specific question about the climate action gathering, which I attended, and really was profited from, I guess. Can you say a bit more about where that's going, the next step, and whether there's plans in place to do another one, or what's happening as a result of that?
So what we heard loud and clear from the climate action gathering was that we didn't want to be done. And we wanted to continue to build relationships. And so out of that, a small, we call it the nitty-gritty planning committee. And many of the folks who are in that photo that I shared with you earlier, in addition to other community partners, I'm just going to put us up there, have come together, and we are meeting monthly to, first of all, develop a terms of reference on how we work together, but to look at opportunities where we can share information, share learning opportunities. We want to do field trips. We want to have more collective relationship building. And so all of that is going on behind the scenes right now, and you may not be, it's like the duck, right? There's what you see above the water, and behind the scenes is all of that going on. We are hosting a second one-day full gathering in December again. Our plans are December. But in the meantime, one of the things that we're talking about is not only bringing together people who are aligned and working together and who have a shared vision, but how do we convey that message to the broader community? So we're looking at strategies to be able to share the good work with the broader community, to grow understanding about what we can do around climate and resiliency and caring for our community. So that's all going on a monthly meeting, and if there's anybody here who wants to be a part of that, call me.
Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much. I sit as a liaison from the board on our Cowichan, and I think, you know, I've been doing this for 5 years as a liaison, and you're going to have to tear me away from that if you want to replace me, because it is fun, but it is, it's in the works, isn't it? But it's so inspiring because you're in a group of people that really are actually, they're hands-on with people in our communities, and it's usually with food, and it's shared, and you don't walk away without being really inspired by some situation. And even the last, if I can speak to the last meeting, it was like over the top. Like it was, you would not, I will try not to go too long, Chair, but we talked about the Cowichan School and about what they're doing there, how it's being laid out. We talked about robotics for elders, about how it's making an impact for people in long-term care and Alzheimer's, and these robotic pets that come in that they're providing through the grant process that got it off the ground. And then we also had a skit, I call it a skit, but it was really a presentation, a performance on lived experience on the street about a person, her background, her family, and how she ended up in dire straits, and how she picked herself up, and how the community was there when she picked herself up. And then it was revealed she was there in our group, and her mother was there, and her brother was there, and yeah, I goosebumps right now just thinking about it. And for me, it was such a powerful moment about our Cowichan, about providing the platform for that voice to get heard. And so I think you understate a few things, because as well as our Cowichan providing this opportunity for all of the organizations that want to get involved, I think it's also providing an example for the province, and probably for others as well, that there is something that can happen when you have this organic grassroots approach to solving problems. And I expect that this is something that others will want to take. They already are taking examples of. And I will end with a question. So the question I have is we have a notice of motion on the board meeting to how do we generally help youth? And so it's a very broad question, but is there something that you would say, hey, consider a couple of these things perhaps when you talk about that? So over to you.
Oh my goodness. So for youth, we have been generally underserved in this region for a long time. Great organizations, and I was here the other day when we presented with Cowichan Valley Youth Services and Canadian Mental Health Association and some of our other community partners. I'm not going to name them all, but know that they're there. We're at a place now where we are building, where we are ensuring that we have wraparound care for our young people. But it's also about family. And if you come from a community that has strong families, strong connections, your children and your youth are healthier. And so for us, many of the service organizations on the ground, we are responding to situations that are already in place, right? And we're putting the resources in place. But for us as a broader community, how many of you are actually going out there and volunteering with soccer, with dance, with, I don't know, we build parks, but how many of us as individuals and neighbors really know the kids down the street and their families? And so if we build a community that has that kind of depth and strength, we won't be needing the other part of our community to be building these resources and shelters. And so that's one part. The other part is currently I'm working with the same planning group that we had here, because we can have kids in our shelter, but then what? They age out. Do they go to Warmland Shelter and continue the journey, or do we have an impact on changing their story at that point? And so we have a really important planning team that's coming together to design next step housing for our young people. And in order for that housing to be effective, we need somebody to operate it. We need funding to have staff in there during the day and during the night to keep our kids safe. We have somebody who wants to buy us a house or a place because they believe in what we're doing in this community. But do we need more than that? And so we need our local governments and our community and our health and all of our partners to really understand that in order for us to put resources in place, it's the layers of support and funding and zoning and all of those pieces that come into play, and to really think about that when you make decisions in our community. And then the next piece that we're working on down the road, when funding ever comes available, would be to provide a foundry in this region for families. And so you as local government, as advocates for the resources that we need, is profound, and we need it.
Great, thank you. I'll now move on to Director Beeston.
If you could touch on, I understand the need to consolidate services so that you can offer them, but when you're talking about community outreach, if we have a youth in Ladysmith who needs shelter, but their school and their peers are in Ladysmith. And even, looking at transitional housing maybe down the road, how does that work together?
So that's one of those complex challenges that takes a lot of people to come together to figure out how to solve it. And Ladysmith, it kills me inside every day when we have cross-boundary systems that don't align. And so the only way we can solve that is through relationships, understanding, making sure that there is alignment between cross-boundary organizations. So if there's a youth that needs to get to a shelter, they have two options. They can go to Nanaimo or they can go to Cowichan. And it's the knowledge of whoever is supporting that young person that can help make those connections. And from our perspective, from the Cowichan, from the youth work that we've just done in our outreach van, if there is somebody who contacts the Cowichan shelter, the Misha Lalem, as we've named it, and they need a place to go, we use that van and we go and get them and we bring them and then we make the connections. But it is 100% about relationships, shared knowledge, and working together.
Director Kallio.
Almost. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Lise, for that presentation. That was awesome, and it warms your heart to think about the good work that you guys are doing in the community. Raising the $4 million is, as my fellow director pointed out, is not an easy task. Grant writing is a art. I can say that for sure. And I just have a couple questions. One is how old are your clients on average? And also, how are your clients referred to you for your shelter that you're running there?
Oh, so you're speaking of youth?
Yes.
So, because the Health Network doesn't have clients, so the shelter belongs to our community and CMHA. So we became a pilot project. And because we're in a pilot project phase, the province stipulates the ages of the young people that we serve there. And right now it's 15 to 18. As long as we have this pilot project funding in place. We know that, it kills me, we have kids on the street who are 13. And so no person would be turned away, but it's how we support them that would be different. But for now, it's 15 to 18 at the shelter as it exists at this time.
Okay. One other thing is just, you hit on something that's really important, is that you need to have a transitional phase for these when they age out, because I have a friend whose son came out of, some good work was done for that person, but once they aged out, it was basically, I'll see you later. So, yeah, thank you for all your good work.
Thank you.
On behalf of the committee, Ms. Lise, I want to thank you for your presentation. As you've highlighted, sorry, Director Wilson, do you have another? Yeah. Okay, I'll wait then. Continue.
Sorry, it was one of the things that you just said, Cindy, which really is kind of shocking, where anyone under the age of 15, is there support for those out there?
Absolutely. And we work really closely with our community organizations, with the Ministry of Children and Family Development, our Indigenous supports for young people. It's about ensuring that whatever reason has them out on the street, or wherever they are in their situation, in their world, that we're able to make the connections and get them back to where they belong. That's our intent always, right? Family and your community and where you belong. And so there are policies and procedures in place as to how to do that. But that doesn't take away the fact that we still have young people, for whatever reason, are choosing or not choosing or are not able to be supported where they want.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Lisa, again, on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for your presentation today. As you've highlighted, on a very limited budget, our Cowichan Communities Health Network has managed to leverage a significant amount of additional funds and to do a lot of great work in our community, covering a whole wide range of areas, from supporting seniors and youth to responding to climate change, protecting our airshed, and also addressing the opioid crisis and the growing problems with people experiencing homelessness through the community action team, and also your support for the Village Project on Trunk Road, which has obviously been a very innovative and successful model for tackling this crisis. I just want to highlight one of the projects that you described in your presentation, the youth shelter. I know you've told me about this over the years, and it's a part of the challenge we face here at the CVRD, I think at all levels of government, is we advocate on so many issues to the senior levels of government. We tend to come up empty-handed in most cases, and it creates a lot of frustration. But I think with the youth shelter is a great example of having a dedicated group of people in the community, including our Cowichan and many other organizations, and you kept advocating for that. The province kept saying no, but you didn't give up, and now we have this great facility in our community that's helping some of our most vulnerable residents, and that's thanks to you and all the other folks who, again, wouldn't give up and wouldn't take no for an answer. And I think that should be a source of inspiration for all of us around this table, not to give up on our efforts to advocate for our community. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah, Director Staples.
Thanks. I just wanted to add, just so that people have an awareness of how long that took.
Yeah.
I was at a table with Mayor Lefebvre, Mayor Kent, people who, Ernie Mansuetti, people who were no longer in organizations, and a number of other people in 2014. And they came up with the youth shelter had to be what we were focusing on. So just to give you an indication of how many hands that has moved through, John also was there, I believe, at some of those meetings back in the day. But how many hands that has to pass through, and how many people have to keep picking that up to make this happen. So that's how long it took, and that was the number one priority then. So all of these things that we do don't happen overnight often, unless there's a pandemic, and it takes leadership in our community to continue to pass the baton forward to people as they come to carry that into reality. So I just also want to thank all of those people whose names I can't even think of off the top of my head, who've been part of this all of that time, but also really just to give an indication to people of how long something like this actually took.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Staples. And so the Health Network is your place. The Health Network is your place to come to listen, to learn, and to understand your community. And I am dying to come back to you in the fall with more data and stories about our community. So I'm happy to have been here today with you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move on to correspondence. We have information here on the UBCM advocacy resolution deadline. I'll turn to our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just some contextual points here. The Electoral Area Services Committee considered the recent information from the UBCM regarding an upcoming resolution deadline, which is June 15th. You'll recall that, as is typical process, 3 resolutions were put to the local area association, the AVICC, at the convention. And they were all endorsed. And so those will be proceeding through the system. And those 3 topics were on active transportation, funding for Indigenous engagement in land use initiatives, and again, as has been done for pretty much the last decade, some advocacy around the private managed forest lands issues that continue to be a challenge in the region. And so this is on the agenda today to give an opportunity for discussion about any additional resolutions that you might want to put directly to the UBCM. They do encourage all local governments to go through the area associations as a primary venue for raising issues. But if something has come up or is pressing now and wasn't in previous months, there's always an opportunity to put additional resolutions forward. So I'll just remind you of the advocacy issues over the past couple of years and then just pause, and I'm sure there's a couple of items that will come up here for discussion from directors. But in 2023, at the UBCM, we had a number of topics for advocacy, 7 in total, and we had attended 4 meetings that year. We were advancing some concerns around the MRDT and a new fiscal framework for local government. We were advocating on the Stocking Dam rebuild, and again on private managed forest lands issues in water, primarily related to watersheds. We advocated on the Cowichan Weir and were successful through that advocacy in supporting Cowichan tribes and receiving additional funding from the province. And we were also advocating that year on South Cowichan governance, and we were successful in getting funding for community issues assessment, which is completed now. In 2024, we were advocating at that time for additional supports for the unhoused, which ties into the delegation presentation you just received today as well. Private managed forest lands again and watershed protection. We were also advocating around seeing additional enforcement in critical watersheds. So we had some staff meetings on that topic, and I believe Director Nicholson was supporting on that. And yeah, so that's a bit of a summary of some of the topics that have been front and center in the past couple of years. So I'll just pause there, and I know there's a couple of concepts that directors want to bring forwards for the UBCM.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm going to turn now to Director Morrison.
Red as go. Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to raise for discussion at committee here the idea that we might look at a resolution around the scoring criteria for the allocation of new hours, specifically for transit, specifically around rural areas. We are fortunate to have a report before us today, and I see we've got Mr. Wright from BC Transit online today, and we will be discussing again the fact that we are essentially shut out of additional transit hours for expansion, and you know our area took a hit from COVID, and we haven't seen the rebound, but we need to get people additional service. We need to get better service, and not just for the more developed urban centers and suburban centers, but you know, if you think about the people in the outlying areas and communities, there's a greenhouse gas issue. So I'd like to raise for discussion the idea that we lobby for changes to the criteria in the performance measures that BC Transit uses to score the allocation and requests for new service hours. It's, you know, if we don't make some noise on this and ask for changes to the criteria, I think we're going to be structurally shut out of new service hours for the foreseeable future. I don't see things changing if we keep getting scored on the basis of what we've been scored. So I raise that with everyone and would love to hear your thoughts and would love to participate in the crafting of a resolution with staff if we decide to go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. There you go.
Just wanted to clarify as you enter into your discussion that because there is a month of preparation available to us here, what I'm proposing today is resolution be passed if you reach consensus on the topics, and staff would come back with a draft resolution as well as a backgrounder as we've done in previous years. Just wanted to clarify that.
Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Miles Wilson, for bringing this before us for discussion. I would turn to staff and respectfully request help in crafting or drafting a resolution to go before UBCM requesting senior level government support to address the burgeoning challenge of derelict vessels washing ashore within the CVRD. I'm sure everyone in our community can cite examples of small and large vessels that have become environmental time bombs along their shorelines. This issue has been raised before at UBCM, most recently from my research, it seems that as of 2016. It is timely, with 4 vessels currently on the mudflats and eelgrass beds of Cowichan Bay, that it is most timely that we advocate for support from our federal and provincial governments. For an excellent example that staff could perhaps refer to, we need not look any further than Washington State, which has a very robust procedure for dealing with derelict vessels. So much of it is dealing with the vessels before they become derelict in a preventative matter. In fact, in Washington State, they deal with it at the time of purchase. You're paying for the demolition, destruction, dealing with the boat at the time of purchase when it's brand new, not when it's, as I'm finding in the Cowichan Bay area, those vessels, many of them on hooks, are low-income housing. And the very most vulnerable people don't have the resources to upkeep the boats, so they end up on the mudflaps. So as I say, it's a bit of a time bomb in all of our communities, and I would, if we're looking for a motion, I would move that we ask that staff work on a derelict vessel proposal to go before UBCM.
Director Abbott, could I get through the next couple speakers, and then if there is consensus, perhaps we can have one motion with more than one item? Would
that sounds sensible, Chair.
Work for everyone?
Yeah.
All right. Director Staples.
Thank you. So, I mean, this is something that we can also probably, I can reach out to Mayor Douglas and speak to about as well as a possible North Cowichan Duncan one, but it also does affect our region because all of us from Director Nicholson's area, we, through Duncan, Cowichan Tribes, and North Cowichan, we deal with the highway corridor. And there has been a number of losses of life on that corridor in the past few months. There's increasing safety issues that have not been addressed. The first plan that I'm aware of that was, or not the first, but the last time there was a significant plan done by MOT in partnership with all of us was in 2015. And it was just an updated plan, I believe, from 2009. And we really need to spend some time working with MOT to develop something because the congestion is just going to keep getting worse. Because of the way that things were built, it's literally waiting for a building to, either have to be demolished or something to be able to make any kind of significant expansions to sidewalks and areas down by Boys Road and specifically around the Super 8 Hotel by Allenby. There are areas where there are senior facility or places where seniors live in that area, oftentimes in scooters. I have been there when one tipped over on the sidewalk because there simply isn't enough room to move around those poles, and the woman fell onto the highway. If the light hadn't been red, she would have been. There's no way she would have escaped fatality, and that has not been addressed. And this continues to not be addressed, and so. Again, I'm comfortable with reaching out to Mayor Douglas to have a discussion about this from our municipalities, but again, it does cross all of our boundaries, and we do need to have a plan to deal with, safety and congestion, and it can't, what are we at now, 2025? That's a long time coming. And I know there was talks about that in the 80s about what to do. And so we have to, I think, finally deal with it and get the province to work with us because this is just going to continue to grow. So thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I think that's a really good idea. And I also agree with Director Morrison that transit is a real issue, but I think the more pressing issue right now is that we don't have transit. And I would really like to see us maybe put forward a motion that it become more of an essential service for people, particularly when you're out in areas like the regional district, the people that are hurt the most are the people who can't afford a vehicle, and we're also spread out, and I've heard of some significant impacts to people's lives because they cannot access regular service. And granted, we really need to improve it so more people can take advantage of it, but I think at this point, we really need to question whether the whole way we provide transit is just not working. So I really don't know much about it, and I would welcome anyone else's thoughts on that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Director Nicholson. So I jotted down some notes here, and just throwing this out there as a potential motion we may want to consider would be direct staff to prepare draft UBCM resolutions on the following topics: revising the scoring criteria for transit expansion, senior level government support for derelict and abandoned vessels, updating the Trans-Canada Highway Corridor Management Plan to address congestion and safety concerns, the Duncan, North Couch, and Cowichan tribes, and CVRD. And the last one, Director Nicholson. Yeah, I'm not sure how to put that one on. I know there's going to be some discussions coming up, and I wonder if we may want to revisit that one at the next meeting. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Director Tatum and then Director Segal.
And then don't touch it.
Don't touch.
Thank you.
Red is go.
Okay. Yes, comparatively to some of these other initiatives, this seems a little bit minor, but maybe because it's minor, it's something that can be, people can get their head around quickly. Right now, up in our neighborhood, Broome is completely out of control. And the Broome is on private lands, it's in parks, it's on highways, it's a visibility problem on the sides of the roads. It's an insect problem with ticks on especially Bald Mountain. And it's a waiting fire hazard that is, the Broome, when it dries out, is just like kindling. And so with the wildfire problems increasing, I think that this is something that's going to be a real issue going forward. So I know there are people that are doing sort of small work in smaller groups, but there doesn't seem to be a coordinated effort. I see Highways goes along and cuts a little path 2 feet wide on the side of the road, but the distance beyond that is still growing at 6 and 8, 10 feet high. So up the hills, it's also growing at a great rate. So I just wondered if there's maybe some kind of coordinated role that could be done between the various agencies that could put together a more cohesive strategy for control of Broome.
Thanks for that, Director T. I'm going to turn to our CAO.
I just wanted to provide a little bit of comment on the topic and the scope, just to kind of tailor it for the UBCM purposes. So typically when you put a resolution, as everyone knows, I'm just stating the obvious, but just for a reminder, putting resolutions through the local area association are more local or regional in nature. To the UBCM, it's provincial in scope. So I just wanted to reflect on the highway corridor safety item, that we would have to come back with something that's more provincial in scope. And I would just propose that potentially you're looking at a ministers' meeting on that topic collectively rather than a resolution, just to clarify.
Thanks for that, Ms. Miles Wilson. I think that makes sense. I'm seeing nodding from Director Staples, yeah. I think we could, ministers' meeting or a letter as well, probably be both, yeah. All right. And just with regards to alternate Director Tatum's suggestion, I've just jotted some wording down, and correct me if this wasn't the intent, alternate Director Tatum, but could it be something along the lines of increase provincial and I threw in BC Hydro support and resources for managing Scotch broom across the province? Or would you prefer more focus on having the strategy?
No, I think. Am I on?
Okay. You're good now. Go for it.
Thank you. I think that's, I think that you're on the right track there, but there's other agencies besides Hydro. You know, the Ministry of Transport, MOTI, looks after the sides of the roads. And
I think that the provincial would cover that. The reason to distinguish. Provincial would cover highways, but the reason for distinguishing BC Hydro is because they're a Crown corporation that would be treated as separate from the provincial government.
okay. Yeah, sure. I think that's a good way to
All
move
right.
forward. Thank you.
I'm sure whatever staff come back with is going to sound better anyway.
Okay.
All right.
No, I off.
So
Just leave it.
so
You only have to touch it.
I got it. So are we in agreement on that then? Focus on the three, the scoring criteria for transit expansion, senior levels of government support for derailed and abandoned vessels, and then resources and support for Scotch broom? Yeah? Yeah, I've got director, so I've got vice chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just a heads up that the town of Lake Cowichan will be putting forward a resolution regarding harmful sunscreens in our water systems, looking for a provincial ban. We were seeking to look at a bylaw to incorporate the banning of the sale within our municipality. Did some investigation, found that that does not reside within our authority. Similar to the plastic bag situation in Victoria. So I'll be seeking your support when that resolution comes forward, not only for the Cowichan watershed, but for all watersheds in British Columbia.
Thanks, Director McGonigal. Director Staples.
Yeah, thank you. And just if we can add, I know it's not a resolution, but add the letter from the regional district, a joint letter from municipalities around that, around the highway corridor, that would be excellent. And thank you for the correction. Yeah, it's just been a long week already around all of this. And so it's, yeah, that makes absolute sense, and that's exactly what should be done. And I think that I just wanted to add that the city is also putting in one around the village model being added as on the continuum of housing. It's being added as a funded model now by the province, but not on the continuum. So just to let everyone know that that's going forward as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn to our corporate officer, who I think has written some of this down.
Oh, yeah, so the three motion.
Yeah, I think it's the first motion with the three parts, and then a second motion with regards to writing the Transportation Ministry.
Right, I have that. Direct staff to draft the UBCM resolutions on revising scoring criteria on transit expansion, senior levels of government on abandoned derelict vessels, increase provincial and hydro support for managing Scotch broom across the province for the first motion.
Director Segal. Okay. Moved. Seconded by Director Staples. Director Marvin.
Might be late to get another one in there. Sorry. I was wondering, have we done anything or able to get any kind of advocacy around licensing of water, licensing of wells particularly, and because of the impact it's having on development, the impact it has on farming, because though you've registered, you've got no idea if the license is going to be upheld. Is that something to be considered?
Okay, I wonder if that could be another ministers' meeting, but I will turn to our CAO.
Yes, Mr. Chair, in response to Director Martman's question, that does sound like a topic where we would want to prepare some briefing materials on the regional issues and potentially request a ministers' meeting. There's been a lot of developments in the past year related to water concerns in the region, so I think that we will come forwards once they do open up the scheduling. And it looks like there's two 2 potential meeting requests already on the highway corridor and potentially this item. So I would propose that that be a minister's meeting request.
Does that work for you, Director Marvin?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Right. So we've got one motion. It's been moved and seconded. We ready for the question? All in favor? And opposed? Unopposed, motion carries. We'll now move on to the second motion.
Thank you, Chair. It would be to ask for a minister's meeting and provide a joint letter for highway corridor safety and work with the MOT. Sorry, I made some extra notes here. And the second minister's a request for a second minister's meeting on regional issues on water and water licensing.
Does that work? Moved by Director of Staff, seconded by Director Staples. Any discussion? All in favor? And opposed? Unopposed, motion carries. All right, we can now move on to reports. We've got here item R1, report from Recycling Waste Management Division regarding the F520 budget amendment portable office trailer. So do we need a overview from staff on that one? From Ms. Harady, are we ready to vote on it? So, Director Nicholson?
I have a quick question. I was wondering we have Parks and Trails staff who work out of Bings Creek, and I'm just wondering what they do for meeting space.
Ms. Harady?
Thank you for that question. Through the U Chair to Director Nicholson, they also have portable trailers that they use.
So a follow-up would be, can you share?
I think we're happy to share our space, but we know that they can't accommodate us.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We'll now move on to item R2, report from the Communications and Engagement Division regarding the CVRD social media update. So are we getting a presentation on this one? Is Mr. Schumacher around? Oh, there we go. Over to you, Mr. Schumacher.
Sorry, just waiting in the lobby patiently. Do we have, yeah. We have a very brief presentation for you, although it's a very complex and interesting matter, but we're going to keep it short in the interest of knowing how much business you have to attend to today. We're talking about everybody's favorite subject, social media. I know you're all on there. Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca. So as you all know, this has become one of the most powerful tools that we have as an organization to communicate with our community. We have a number of channels that we'll walk you through in case you aren't familiar with all of them. And really, this is a for information presentation, so I really just want to make sure everybody is up to speed on where we've come from and where we're at currently with our social media channels. We've seen an incredible growth of our followers over the last 7 years since I joined the organization. Kind of proud of it. But we, for example, our Facebook channel started with less than 100 people following it, and now we have over 6,000. So we're not quite at the 10% of our population, which has always been my goal to get to that point. But we've done some incredible work over the last few years to increase that. So we have a number of platforms that we use regularly. And again, I'm sure most of you are familiar with them. Facebook, Instagram, formerly Twitter, which is now called X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You see Blue Sky in there, and we'll get to that point a little bit later in the presentation. I do want to turn it over, though, to Leah Waldron, who is our resident expert in all things social media, to walk us through a little bit about where we've come from and where we're going.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you to the chair and the board for allowing us to give our presentation. So as Chris was saying, these are the current channels or platforms. They're interchangeable, those two words that we are using. There we go. So why social media matters. Well, for us, this is where we meet with our audience in the largest capacity. And social media is really a key way to reach and connect with our local residents. And that's what it's all about. We want to build relationships with residents that we serve. Okay, so why are we using social media? Everyone does realize probably why we're using it, but it's really to create a dependable source of truth that's coming from us on regional district matters. And again, it's building those relationships with people and communities. But we use social media for messaging about service disruptions, emergencies, programs, initiatives, and events. And it is so useful if there is an emergency. It is two-way, real-time communication that we can do right away. So I'm going to talk a little bit about metrics, our follower growth over the past year. So as Chris was saying, we have seen exponential growth in our followers. And over the last 5 years. And on this slide, we're showing the steady growth of the past year in the number of people following our social media networks, with the exception of X, which is formerly known as Twitter, which saw a major decline after the November 2024 election in the United States. And that decline has continued into 2025. So our follower growth on Facebook in the last 2 years, as you can see, it's continued to grow by 20%. And this is largely organic growth based on our ability to create relevant content. However, we see our largest spikes in new followers during relevant high interest events. So this could be garbage and recycling pickup on a winter day where road conditions aren't ideal. It has been a spike when we announced that we were looking for someone to take over ownership of the world's largest hockey stick. And we also saw a spike during challenging water conditions at Bright Angel Park. So there definitely is a silver lining if there is an issue that comes up, in that we gain more followers and we're able to get that messaging out to more people, more residents about our services and events and initiatives. So we have two different types of posts. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a sip of water. We have regular posts, and those are organic. And we have paid posts. And most of the posts are not paid or promoted. They are organic. And the posts usually do really well for our organic. And it depends on relevance and popularity or unpopularity of the subject matter. And organic posts, they focus more on building the relationships with current followers, where paid has a wider reach. And it focuses on targeting specific audiences for rapid results. So if a topic is popular and residents have a strong opinion, then organic posts do perform very well. And we receive more shares and comments, interactions, and link clicks. The content and design of posts is done in-house, and we do our best to represent the CVRD services and brand in an engaging way for residents. So this is just a global stat, with Instagram being the fastest growing social media platform. and YouTube remains the most used across ages, and Facebook has the most users. So our CVRD YouTube channel is used for meetings like this, and it does perform well for views of program initiative content, such as watershed videos or garbage and recycling Mythbuster videos. And we would like to further utilize YouTube going forward by creating more video content, from explanatory videos about the regional district to short clips that explain service delivery or changes to services. So platform trends for 2025, this is from Hootsuite. The industry would be government. The best content type for engagement. So on our Facebook and Instagram, we have carousels and albums perform best, and they both mean the same thing. It's just multiple photos in a post that you can look through with the text content. As stated, we want to invest more time into creating short video content because it tends to do well across all channels. And it's one of the best resources for this is our staff, of course, who could take short videos while they're in the field and create some relevant and fun, engaging posts for residents. So social media strategy, I would now like to hand the presentation back to Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Leah. At the risk of taking up too much of your time, don't really want to get into too much of the weeds about this, but this kind of gives you an oversight of when people maybe are changing their policy about this. So we are in the point of monthly at this point to make sure that we're reflecting exactly what needs to be communicated out and talking about channels and where we might want to go, how we can do better. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges that come with this, and thankfully, we do have an expanded department recently, and we're able to manage our online presence much better than we were able to in the past. Now, again, decentralized system that we employ here means that we have 2 dozen or so staff members who are all responsible for posting content on behalf of their division or the department. It's worked really well for us despite how challenging it was to get to this point now. And we have regular meetings and contacts with them and training and tutorial sessions to make sure that everybody is up to speed and feels confident in doing this work, which has, I think, been very rewarding for a lot of staff members that are able to feel like they're contributing to our overall goals as far as resident engagement goes. We also use a channel, which I'll get into in the next slide, or a platform called Hootsuite, which manages all of our social media channels. This makes it much easier for both us as the communications and engagement division to post content and schedule content, but it also provides an opportunity for staff to put their content in there, understand what the posting schedule is for our channels, and so that we're not overlapping and, for example, saying something about solid waste and then 10 minutes later posting something about utilities. So it works really, really well, and it also gives us oversight to be able to go in, maybe correct wording or have questions with staff about the content they want to post. Now, of course, we've got scams, frauds, all kinds of things that can possibly go wrong. There's a certain component of that staff need to go in and moderate or change the wording of posts depending on if they're posting to a certain channel, because there's character restrictions or it might not format well. But again, this centralized point of posting really does help us in able to do that. Again, I won't belabor the point of just a really strong team approach within the organization that I think everybody feels pretty good about contributing to at this point and is enabling our success. again, I've already said Hootsuite, but this is kind of what it looks like, so we can calendarize our content. And if you haven't, you obviously have the presentation if you want to look at that a little bit more in depth. Now, in terms of a strategy, I don't want to take too much time from you and talk about this, but we constantly think about how we can improve across these channels. And so a few things that we've identified is video content, obviously, as Leah said, is probably the most important way for us to engage with the community and get more people to understand what we do as a regional district. Service disruptions, all those things perform so much better if we have some kind of visual content to go along with them. We continue to do staff training across the organization, which we will improve upon and even get better at from what we're doing right now. And again, plain language, shorter messaging, which I'm sure you all strive for in your own social media lives. What we really want to get to, though, is a level where we are actually seeing some kind of engagement. So unfortunately, these channels, although they're designed to provide two-way communication between friends, family, whoever, it's much more difficult when you're an entity that is trying to present yourself out there in that way. So what we really want to get to is see more people commenting on our posts in a positive or neutral way, and asking important questions that maybe they have that they're not getting from whatever information that we've already put out there. So really, that would be the ideal that we can get to. Now, the most important reason why we wanted to give these the presentation today is because, as Leah has mentioned, and we won't belabor this, I think everybody knows that we've seen a huge decline in the use of Twitter, and there's a number of reasons why other local governments and regional governments have pushed away from it, either altogether and said we're not going to use this platform because of misinformation and hate speech and other things. There's other local governments that have pushed the pause button and said we're going to keep it, but just post it when we need to communicate an emergency situation, which is what that is our preferred way of going about it, because again, our following on there has always been not local residents. It is majorly either politicians, news organizations, other ways that can amplify our message, which does really help us when we need to get something out in an emergency situation. So what we're proposing, again, this is for information, what we are working towards is to transition from X and Twitter and use a new tool called Blue Sky. I'll let Leah come up and talk a little bit about like the strengths of this platform and give you a bit of an overview.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, so as Chris said, we have currently joined Blue Sky, but we're not using it yet. It's pending, and our handle is @mycvrd. And one of the strengths of Blue Sky is that it is a decentralized social media app that's open source. So it's open, it's customizable. If you wanted to take all your followers and data with you and go to a different platform, you could do that. It's very user-centric, so you can make lists of only the users you want to see in your feed. And it also allows you to do moderation much more easily than some of the other platforms. So if you don't want comments because people are in the field that day and maybe you can't get to a comment right away, you can turn off comments, or you can keep them on, or you can have them for specific groups. You can choose different algorithms for the timelines and even develop the new features on Blue Sky itself. It seems to be a much more fun and sort of like not as intense social media app as some of the others have become in recent years. And many of our regional partners are also joining on Blue Sky. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm going to now turn to the committee. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to make a comment here, and this has happened over and over again, and it's probably going to be a little bit negative here, but when somebody says it's brief and it's not, it tends to go on a bit. So, and I know communication is very, very important, but let's talk about videos here. Chris, you mentioned that you want to go more and more with videos. Is this a private production or is that done in-house, and is it costly?
Through the chair to Director Wilson, yes, that is one of the hardest things about creating video content, is that it is time intensive and costly usually to create. Is it worth doing? Absolutely. I think we need, as part of our strategy develops going forward, figuring out ways that we can create video content at a low cost without having to hire and go out for that externally.
Yeah, that's one of the worrying things about the cost of going externally here. All right, thank you very much.
Director Beeston.
I'll first say I don't use Twitter or Blue Sky, never have. But I want to comment, according to the Canadian government, there are a low estimate of 11 million to a high estimate of 14 million Canadians that do use Twitter, which is 40% of our population. Whereas Blue Sky, which is probably growing, has potentially less than 1 million followers. And I'm wondering, does this come from an ideological standpoint that we just don't like Twitter because of certain political issues? And are we not supposed to represent all of the citizens in our community and provide opportunities for communication, not just those who we ideologically agree with? And if somebody is using Twitter and is a proponent of Twitter, they're not worthy of being given the same communication as other citizens. The other thing is, if you're posting, if you're worried about reliability, if you're posting the same content on all sites, on Blue Sky and on Twitter and everything else, then people aren't going to have an opportunity to worry about whether the content is true or not. I just think that we should be using all possible methods of communication to reach all of our citizens, not just the select few who we think are worthy of receiving it.
Yeah, Director Beeson, I'll let Mr. Schumacher explain that one, but my understanding was this wasn't ideologically motivated. It was more because we've seen a big drop in the number of ex-followers of the CVRD since last fall, and that staff will continue to use X, but they're going to put a stronger emphasis on Blue Sky in terms of sharing information. But perhaps, Mr. Schumacher, you want to elaborate on that?
And do we have those actual numbers? Like,
Yeah,
are we
it's-
still?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think one of the slides covers it, and I know it was a lot of info.
I
Let me just
couldn't
find
read
you.
them.
I think it's the
Need
social
better
media
glasses.
metrics. So it's this one right here. I can hand it to you, but you can see there's a big drop in the number of X users here. I'll pass this over in a moment.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't read it.
No, it's okay.
I need better glasses, I guess, so. But if, is it still, if there's still that many that are, if it's still equivalent with Blue Sky at this point, then it's something we should probably still be supporting.
Yeah, and I think the plan is to still use it, but just not to the same extent as had been historically the case. But perhaps, Mr. Schumacher, you want to elaborate on that?
No, it's absolutely, thank you, Chair. You have captured exactly the point of this, is that we need to focus less on channels that don't mean anything to us. And an interesting thing, when I came to this regional district and to the Vancouver Island, it was shocking how few people in British Columbia actually even used it 7 years ago. Residents are not on there. We are not engaging and talking to people who live in our community and receive the services that we deliver, which was surprising, coming from Ontario. But that's the case largely, and so we always evaluate these channels to see, are we actually talking to people that we want to reach? And in this case, it's just not, it's never been the channel that we need, and this is not, I don't believe that we're doing this for any ideological reasons other than we just need to focus our efforts where it makes the most sense for us, so.
Good, thanks for that. I'm now turned to Director Eustache.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad, as I said, I touched on this at the last meeting. I was a little preemptive, so I'm glad to see this come back. And I'll speak to a bit about why Blue Sky is so successful and so good. It's 38 million new users in the last 4 months alone. For Vancouver Island, let's be very specific and be regional to what we're doing. Everybody that's on it has left X because the owner, and I will speak ideologically, has openly attacked the sovereignty of Canada. And why would we support a platform that attacks the sovereignty of our country openly and attacks our politicians and tears down what we believe in Canada? So there's my ideological rant with that, and is why we see such a large amount of local government, professionals, educators, urban planners, city planners, media, and then also all the elected officials have left Twitter and are on social media. So our local MLAs are on there. Our past MP was very active on there, and our new existing ones. I speak regularly with our new Liberal MP in Victoria, Will Greaves, active on there. Great examples of local government that are extremely active on there are City of Victoria, City of Parksville, Town of Ladysmith has a great account. They're not using it yet, but they've created an account. View Royal does a fantastic job, but also UBCM is very active on there. We just spoke about that today. They're already showing their platforms. And speaking to videos, they put some little videos up to what Mr. Director Wilson's point is everybody has a free video camera in their hands. So UBCM took photos and made video when they were in the legislature advocating on our behalf after the recent election on things that we've advocated as CVRD. Blue Sky is unique in a way as it reaches a different level of our demographic and population. While that we're trying to target residents, there's a big interaction between local media and news reporters. So CBC, the majority of all the island, Stephen Quinn, Justin McElroy, they're top provincial reporters, as well as our other legislative ones are on there. So they're actually, I've seen them sharing CVRD news stories, City of Duncan news stories. So it's that level of engagement in a higher level. And also, especially South Island, I'm following actively 75 elected officials. And again, just on Vancouver Island. I'm a big user. I did social media professionally, so that's why I'm very eager to see that, where it's a different type of engagement. It's urban planners, it's transportation experts, it's emergency management experts. So it's a different spectrum. So as Mr. Schumacher spoke about the Twitter was always big, and it was always about, that's where you went about local government, news, education, finance, talking about kind of that next level up rather than just what's happening on your street. It was just that next level of engagement, and I think it'd be great to see. I think CVRD does a fantastic job on Facebook, and echoing that on Blue Sky will be great. It's not for everybody. I think right now it's Director Abbott and myself following my CVRD, but it's wonderful, and Director Segal's on there now. I haven't seen them active, but it's nice to see them there. And a lot of social media isn't about being active, but it's about seeing. And the one very unique thing that Blue Sky has that no other platforms have is it's called starter packs or lists, where you can actively curate a following that you can stay engaged with every day, and it clears out all the mess of the nastiness of algorithms, where I get a feed of every single thing happening on Vancouver Island government every day. And I can interact directly with that and see only those posts. And then also that helps me understand what's happening. As I said, other elected officials, City of Langford, they're actively doing their OCP right now. I get to see things they're doing differently that we could bring to our local government. So just to speak to that, to Twitter, the other communities have all left. We've seen there's been very loud ones about it, where North Vancouver openly, they completely deleted their X account. I do it ideologically. I wiped out my account, got rid of it, and then Facebook as well is changing a little bit. That's going to be the tough thing for all of us is with Facebook is replying to comments, though. That's tough. Do we just put information and let the truth be shared, or do we engage? Because sometimes with Facebook myself, I've pulled all of my professional advertising and all my professional engagement because I saw no longer value in it and have invested in local media sources. So it's a tricky one there. Sorry to take so long on it. It's just something I do professionally and I've done, and I made a living off social media. So I'm always excited to see that we embrace positive areas. And at the same time, we need to take, personally, I took an ideological stand with X being what the private ownership of that company was doing to Canada. So that's why we saw such a surge, and that drop in engagement is because so many people have left X. It's just not the place you go. They removed many of their sensitivity filters, and what they said was free speech was actually hate speech that they've brought back in there. And that's just not a place that I personally, as an elected official, would want to see an organization support when then there's other free open source areas that want to have open and good discussion, but just don't allow the hate and the respect for one another in civil discourse that we've, as we can see at this CVRD board, do so well together. So we should replicate that same discourse we expect in person to person that we should on social media. Great presentation. Thank you for all you do for the communication for the CVRD.
Great, thanks, Director Stash. I'm going to go now to Director Segal.
Thank you. Really just a comment, not a question, since it was mentioned that I'm on Blue Sky but not active yet. I definitely have a complicated relationship with social media and need to protect my mental health. So I just want to loop back to one of the first things that Miss Waldron, did I get that right? Said at the beginning. Just thank you so much for being a dependable source of truth on social media. It's a huge amount of pressure, I feel, as one director to try to do that for my community. It's way more powerful coming from the organization. So just thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Director Beeston, to close.
That just brought to mind, maybe we need a workshop on social media so that we know how to use and utilize these things. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So thank you, Mr. Schumacher and Ms. Waldron, for your presentation. And to the committee, this was just provided for information. Staff aren't looking for any direction from us at this time. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I would just say if it's the will of the committee, the board, to have a more focused workshop, we're certainly happy to provide that. There's a lot here, and we've tried to give it as much of a high-level overview as we can, but obviously we've taken up more time than anybody wanted to. And Mr. Chair, maybe look into Director Istash's connection with Blue Sky. There might be a conflict. That's a joke, sorry. I'm going to turn now to Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn to the CAO.
Yes, I just wanted to remind everyone that we did invite Christina Benty in, and I think that was last year, so we can recirculate those materials as a starting point rather than jumping into anything about another workshop. But if that material needs to kind of be followed up on, then we can definitely entertain that.
All right, Director Stash.
Just a quick follow-up on the workshops where we might be able to get away with birding staff. I do know through the Duncan Cowichan Chamber and their collaboration with Tourism Cowichan, often there are free social media workshops that come through there that maybe if you sign up to the Duncan Cowichan or the Tourism Cowichan newsletters. Again, I don't think we call newsletters social media, but as we saw the report last week, newsletters is our best source of engagement in the CVRD. So as a shout out to those other groups, their newsletters provide great information and also often have free social media workshops. So just watch what Tourism Cowichan is doing, because as elected officials, we have a stake in that. We could probably get in on their free workshops.
All right, thanks for that. Thanks again. All right, everyone, we've got 3 more items here, including at least one that looks like it's going to be pretty heavy, so we might have to pick up the pace a bit if we want to wrap this up in time for lunch. So now we're on item R3, report from the Facilities and Transit Division regarding update on first-year requests from the 3-year transit service expansion plan. So we have staff available, and from the, sorry, what's that? Okay. So we've got CVRD staff here as well as a representative for BC Transit. So if the committee would like an overview, if you have any questions, that's certainly an option, or we can just get straight into the recommendation. What's the will of the committee? Director Wilson, you're the only one looking at me right now.
Well, it depends on whether it's going to be brief or not, and it's obviously not. So, let's dive into it, I suppose.
All right, do you want to move the recommendation? Yep. Okay, it's moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Director Abbott. I'm going to now turn to Director Justice.
Yeah, I just have a question for staff, I guess. These were obviously disappointing results, and the staff report notes that that requests like this are evaluated in a multi-criteria process. And I'm just wondering if we know if this process is purely evidence-based, objective, impartial, or whether subjectivity and even political nudging can have some effect on how the decisions are made. And I guess what I really want to know is, in addition to preparing requests that are better optimized to succeed in the evaluation environment, and in addition to what Director Morrison was suggesting earlier about asking for criteria changes that better suit our needs, might it be worth spending time lobbying at various political levels for our transit needs? Is that something that we would profit from doing? And I ask this to staff because I just don't know how that process unfolds.
Ms. Rondo, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you. I can speak to a few pieces, but I think I'd like to turn sort of the broader question over to Seth Wright, who's the BC Transit Senior Government Relations Manager, and he can speak directly to the evaluation, I'll call it a matrix or criteria. But just in regards to the transit service expansion requests, yes, it is disappointing. We had some good news that CVRD and the Regional District of Nanaimo were successful in obtaining service expansion hours to implement new Sunday service on the interregional. And last year we did have some custom service expansion, but conventional service is really where we're needing some additional service hours to improve the transit service. We have no shortage of recommendations, suggestions, feedback all the time from residents of the Cowichan Valley on how to improve transit service. And we've been working closely with BC Transit to develop more than one plan. So we do have a list of items that we've been putting forth, and we know what those initiatives look like. So yeah, it has been disappointing. And so there are some ways that perhaps we could frame the requests in a more favorable light. I know there has been some work internally with BC Transit on acknowledging in their evaluation repeated requests. There are sort of maybe points allocated for that when an area really is just looking for kind of the same improvements. But I'll leave that to Seth to speak towards a little bit more, because he's more involved in that criteria. That being said, I think the committee has expressed a desire to find ways to advocate for the transit service expansion in our region. And I was here earlier when there was some discussion around perhaps a UBCM motion, as well as an option might be to just write a standalone letter from our area to the ministry in regards to that. Yeah, those would be two items that kind of come to mind right now. But perhaps I'll let Seth speak to the criteria if he's able to.
Welcome, Mr. Wright. Before I turn to Mr. Wright, just to clarify for the committee, I had understood there was a motion required. However, there isn't. So there are the two routes that will be expanded. As Ms. Rondo noted, the Couch and Victoria Express and the Nanaimo Couch and Express. However, we already provided direction for those expansions as part of the development of the 2025 budget, and we have allocated funds for that. So we don't need a additional motion to move forward with that. Staff already have direction to do so. But I will turn now to Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Chair Douglas, and I just wanted to start by responding to the question from Director Justice on the scoring matrix, and I will say that yes, it's an objective evaluation process, and it does evaluate all expansions that we receive, that BC Transit receives from local governments across the province, according to a set number of criteria. Those criteria skew heavily towards an emphasis on ridership. Ridership in the Cowichan Valley tends to be one of the lowest ridership systems that's been passionately asking for expansion for a number of years now. So that's where your score is really coming in low. And unfortunately, BC Transit in the last couple of years, because of pent-up demand through the pandemic, has just received an overwhelming backlog of expansion requests. We received an unprecedented level of expansion this year and last year from the province. It was about 120,000 hours. The province has indicated that next year they're going to allocate 130,000 hours of expansion to receive that, but we're facing over 200,000 hours now of expansion requests per year. Historically, we received 50,000 hours of expansion requests. So you can see we're just receiving lots of desire for growth of expansion. Unfortunately, this Cowichan Valley has not been able to be the recipient of that success that the province has been able to fund for expansion across the province. There are a couple things that Cowichan Valley Regional District staff have been working with BC Transit and my colleague, especially in planning, who's looking at what expansion request we might put in for next year. And one of those, or two of those pieces, are things that would expansion requests from the CVRD. One is that we do have some I'm sorry if I have connectivity issues. I seem to be...
Hey, Mr. Wright, if you want to hold that thought, we can come back to you in a moment.
Duncan, and there's some on-time reliability issues. Another is that we need an extra bus to address some mileage issues.
Well, we can come back to Mr. Wright in a moment. I'm going to go to Director Nicholson. Oh, there we go. Is it Mr. Wright? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm sorry. My connection doesn't appear to be very solid today.
Yeah, you sound fine now. If you want to finish that thought.
Because of the twin concerns that have arisen in the last year with Cowichan Valley Regional District's transit system, one being congestion through the highway in the Duncan core, and the second one being a mileage issue where the buses are going more than the scheduled miles, so we need an extra bus to be able to ensure that the buses are able to lift the full lifespan. We're able to incorporate some minor adjustments into the expansion plan for next year, and that will improve the overall scoring that Cowichan Valley receives. Cowichan Valley was just under the scoring matrix, and I would note that one of the reasons that interregional service got expansion and not your local service is that we only have so many buses for expansion, and the expansions on the interregional service didn't require buses, even though that service scored slightly lower than the local service. The local service needed those buses, and we didn't have the buses. They were already ultimately ascribed or allocated to systems that had higher ridership and higher scoring overall.
Great, thanks for that, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. It just strikes me that we're in a bit of a catch-22, and I think this strike is making it a lot more difficult to encourage people to ride the bus. And we never seem to get a good enough service, at least in my area that's close to town, that is serviced now, but there's not enough service to really encourage people to use it on a regular basis. what really comes to my mind is, and I was going to make a question, but maybe it's more of a comment. I am wondering if as part of the criteria, you think about whether we have a regional growth strategy or not. And I'm wondering if that is maybe a tool that might start to address this chronic issue we have with transit and low ridership because we are so spread out. So I think it's, I think we probably bear some of the blame for the situation that we're in, but I do think we should think carefully about how we can increase ridership so that we do score better in the future.
Thanks, Director Nicholson. Any comment on that, Mr. Wright? Or Ms. Rondo?
Yeah, certainly. I wouldn't want to step too deep into the fray of internal board conversations, but I would certainly say that from a transit perspective, land use density and general configuration of where your density is within your regional district has a big role to play in ridership levels. We see the highest ridership on the routes 2 and 3, which are really centered within Duncan and in North Cowichan urban areas. And we have much lower ridership, obviously, to the rural areas, which are fairly long distances. I often compare Comox Valley and Cowichan Valley because they have some similarities, but Comox Valley is centered within 3 much larger municipalities that provide the bulk of ridership, and in those communities we have a much bigger Route 1 that runs from Comox to Courtenay and carries 80% of the ridership of that entire transit system. So there's interesting comparisons that I can see through land use that could be enshrined in a regional growth strategy. So that's perhaps a piece on that. I might take a second if I could, with your approval, to speak to a question that Director Nicholson spoke to earlier this morning around the essential service level, and I just wanted to provide a technical clarification that those essential service levels are not set by BC Transit nor by the province directly, but rather by the Labor Relations Board in the province of BC during a strike. This is as with any labor dispute, Labor Relations Board has the responsibility to set those essential service levels.
Great, thanks for that, Director Estache.
Thank you, Chair. Don't know if it'll be for Mr. Wright or for staff, but being that at least we can keep gaining momentum with the NCX service and investment there, and of course seeing the successful ridership of that, is it more probable then if we can keep focusing on, or is there current focus on getting an actual Chemainus stop for the NCX, which would increase, if we're not going to put the enhancements in the 34 and the 6, at least having a stop there, the residents can hopefully connect there, or if it's just a tweak in the routing of the 34 and the 6 to connect to the NCX, which would then better service the entire area. It's just, again, being that Chemainus itself has 5,000 people and cannot connect to a regional service is such a shame. And then hearing with the regional scoring model that even getting any funding enhancements for the 34, the 6, or any future positive steps forward in Saltaire we might have. The low-hanging fruit does the CVRD need to make the investment, or do we lobby the province? But I know there was work, and I even myself saw the BC Transit staff meeting at Mount Brenton Golf Course trying to figure out a stop. Is it looping down into Chemainus? Is it stopping on the highway? What optimism or hopeful future can we see with actually getting a stop in an area that serves probably 7,000 people that has no stop?
Ms. Rondo or Mr. Wright? Mr. Wright?
Thank you, to Director Estache. After the work that we've done with CVRD staff and RDN staff to look at stop locations to serve Chemainus, the preferred stop is really on the highway at Henry Road, and I've personally had conversations with MOT staff, Ministry of Transportation and Transit, over time. Most recently, that conversation has centered on, we understand that there's a proposed rezoning and OCP amendment of the property with North Cowichan of the property at that corner, and that is the exact ideal area for a northbound stop on the NCX. If we were able to establish a northbound stop on that location that was supported by the Ministry of Transportation, we'd be able to establish service for Chemainus. The southbound is not an issue. It's always been the northbound. So we're just looking for alignment with the North Cowichan on establishing a stop on the highway, and obviously with the ministry, but the ministry and I have already had some of those conversations.
Great, thank you very much for that. That is hopeful to hear that, and I believe our public hearing is next week on that property. So if that creates a spot, because I know it's easy access out on, as you said, the southbound isn't an issue, it's the northbound. So thanks for the really great answer. Appreciate that.
All right, I want to thank Director Nicholson and Mr. Wright for your comments around the relationship between land use planning and transportation planning. There's often a tendency to put a lot of our work in different silos, but there's a close relationship between the two. And if you look at the work being done here at the CVRD with the Master OCP or some of the recently updated OCPs of the municipalities, we are putting a stronger focus on increasing density within our core already serviced areas. And while that's not going to address the challenges we're facing today in terms of accessing funding for expanding transit, hopefully over time that will put us in a much better position to have some success with the province, as opposed to continuing to spread our development out across the countryside, which obviously makes it very challenging to increase ridership or to secure that additional provincial funding for expanding our transit routes. So thanks, Mr. Wright, thanks staff for the overview of this. Okay, we've got two more reports here. Report from the Environmental Services Division regarding regional water conservation and stewardship programs. I do see we have staff here, but I will turn to the committee. Would you like an overview of this, or do you feel like there was enough information in the report? Director Morrison?
I would like to hear the rationale and some of the information behind this, if they have a presentation for us.
All right, I'd like to welcome staff up to the podium. Mr. Moore?
Sorry, first time using this one. Thank you, Chair, and to the committee. We don't have a formal presentation. I'm just going to briefly run through the report, and then myself and staff are here to answer any questions if you want to dig into anything. Briefly, this report is largely in response to the motion from the board in February asking for what we could do in terms of water conservation and stewardship program within the region. So for a bit of a background, we're not starting from scratch on this one. The CVRD has had educational program and some water conservation efforts for over a decade, I guess. In 2015, some of you will be familiar with the new normal. We really kicked off a communications campaign there, and it was more drought focused there. So, and that included the new normal website, a series of brochures, social media. There were banners up around town that some of you may have recall seeing on the Tourist Information Center and out at the COWEX grounds, for example. And then the key part of that initiative was really coordinating the water restrictions across all the jurisdictions within the CVRD, because prior to that time, the restrictions were literally different on opposite sides of the street, depending if you were Duncan or North Cowichan or CVRD. So just to make things so much more simpler for communication staff and for the public to understand the restrictions, we coordinated those. Since that time, I guess characterize our water conservation outreach efforts as sort of ebbing and flowing, in part depending on staff capacity, on the severity of the drought that we were dealing with at that particular time. Some summers it's simply a much bigger issue than others, depending on the conditions that we get. And just recognizing that it hasn't just been the Environmental Services Division either. Utilities has had and continues to have a bunch of water conservation efforts, things like the toilet leak detectors and providing rain gauges and stuff like that. And some of the municipalities have been really taking some leadership on this. The other piece that has happened since 2015, obviously, is the establishment of the DWWP program in 2018, and one of the three pillars of that is public education and outreach. So, water conservation and stewardship efforts really fall clearly within that program. We have budget lines within the DWWP for public education, and specifically one for an incentive program, which we haven't utilized up to this point. And really just emphasizing that within the DWWP, that's kind of seems to be the appropriate home for this type of program because it's regional in nature. The utilities-focused ones are essentially going to have to be limited to the CVRD water systems, which are only service a small portion of the population. So the DWWP broadens our outreach there. So what we're essentially proposing here is two aspects to a program. Starting off with an educational component that we're prepared to get started with that this summer, building on some of the existing materials we have, refining them, updating them, and getting out into the community. The other half of it is a rebate or incentive program to really encourage people to act on some of the water conservation initiatives, and recognizing that sometimes a little financial help or other incentives to get started with the initial investment to be able to make these there's a desire for that. So we're proposing that as part of the 2026 budget process, we can put forward some dollars into an incentive program, and you can consider that as part of the budget deliberations in that program. In preparation for that, we have done some background research. I have to recognize Miss Smith, who was our summer student last summer and did some initial work looking at various conservation programs, rebate programs across the province, and we're fortunate to have her back with us for this summer. So just recognizing that she laid the groundwork for this. So she looked at about 24 different possible rebate and incentive programs that are common in other jurisdictions, and they kind of fall into a couple of main categories. The general focus is reducing water demand, so this includes either rainwater harvesting so that you're able to store more water, so you're not using water, whether it's from a well or a community water system, or other ways of using the water more efficiently, so that even though if you are drawing water, it's all going where it needs to go in terms of providing water to the plants that need it rather than running off or getting evaporated. So these can be split down. There's some are technological, so whether it's providing rain barrels or cisterns or drip irrigation systems, those work great. And the other one is more behavioral in nature that some of these tend to fall under. So that's things where you can get contests to encourage water conservation, whether it's metering to see who can have the biggest drop in their water systems, or if you see some jurisdictions have a golden lawn contest to really celebrate that in this climate lawns don't need to be watered. They'll come back just fine in the fall, as you all know when you have to get your lawnmower out in October. Yeah, essentially looking at all these other examples across the province, one of the best ones we found was actually right next door in the RDN. They've had quite a successful program, and they're also one of the jurisdictions that is quite happy to report on the success of their program in terms of the number of rebates, how much water storage they've increased over the past decade, and there's some stats around that in there. So we're looking as that is a model. So we're suggesting focusing on the rainwater harvesting and the irrigation type improvements as the initial stages of a rebate program. So that is the broad strokes. So what we're looking for today, I guess, is a sense of whether or not we're on the right track with this, if there's any desire for certain areas of focus or something that we've missed on this type of program. Open to any feedback and some comments.
Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Jeff. That's definitely on the right track. This is something which I think has to be addressed, especially from the stewardship point of view. First of all, that to me should be a large component of this actual exercise here, especially what I term the invisible assets, the aquifers below there, something that and I hope that you're working very, very closely, I think you mentioned it, with the DWWP to look at those kind of things. They're not in sight, you don't see them going up and down, but we are monitoring them. The educational side, I think, is especially important as well. There's, for instance, watering of yards can be far more controlled by drip feeding, as opposed to these things going out all over the place. Now, one of the problems with conservation is that in the CVRD, I don't think that we're 100% metered individually. Maybe that's a question for engineering as to whether that's something that they have in mind in the future for the CVRD owned one, because that's a big component, again, of the protection of the assets that we've got there. Kind of a question, isn't it?
Through the chair to Director Wilson and Mr. Mooney can always jump in too. But we do have most of our systems are metered, is my understanding, and there's efforts underway to finish that off. The complex nature of the water distribution systems that we have here means that a lot of our residents are on their own private wells or on improvement districts or small private water systems. They are less likely to have meters in place, in my experience. So there's certainly opportunities for more of that to be done.
I'm on Braithwaite and we are individually monitored. And the last one part of it is the water storage part of it. Are we looking at anything which is larger scale than just the water barrels and things like that? Is that something that we should be looking at?
Yeah, through the chair to Director Wilson, on a household level, I guess we haven't firmed up the details, but it's looking like both rain barrels and cisterns would be, provide opportunities. Rain barrels are certainly much easier to and cheaper to install, but you're limited in how much you can store with that. Cisterns are a much bigger investment, so one of the things we'll be looking at is, do we want to provide fewer rebates towards the bigger investments versus broader rebates that are so more people will be able to take advantage of that. And also if there's opportunities to install a cistern at the time of construction, it's far cheaper when you've already got a big hole in the ground. So if we can support that.
Good stuff. Thank you, Jeff.
Director McGonigal.
Thank you. I'd like to move the two recommendations in the staff report and comment if there's a seconder.
Moved and seconded by Director Stash. Back to you, Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much. And I think it's imperative that the education component align with both aspects of the resolutions. When you look at West Cowichan, for instance, which is the second largest lake on Vancouver Island, there's unbeknownst thought that there is an endless supply of water for watering gardens, for watering plants, etc. But they don't take into consideration the cost of treatment and distribution within that facility. So we may have sufficient water within our West Cowichan area, but it still costs money to treat it. So the education portion on how your lawns and gardens will refurbish themselves is very imperative. With the water metering, I think we have found that has contributed significantly to conservation. So at every opportunity, I think it's imperative that we follow that path. Thank you.
Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. Wasn't expecting a resolution so quickly. I've got a couple of comments. Good report, and I have to just relay some of my thoughts as I was reading through the report. And I know we've confirmed the DWWP function, we've had referendum, but reading through this, I couldn't help but think how much of what we're talking about is provincial jurisdiction. And yes, we've eyes wide open taken on a lot of these responsibilities and planning these new initiatives. And I also think of the fact that a lot of people who are on private wells are very much independent and don't really want to be revealing a whole bunch of information about their consumption and their use and quality and the likes. And I'm hoping this is going to come out as cohesive thoughts, but I'm supportive of initiatives for CVRD water systems and municipal water systems where we are metered, where we can get some quantifiable data from any programs that we implement. So if it's going to be, if we're going down the road of providing rebates and incentives on infrastructure, in systems, in tools, I can be supportive of that. Where I'm not quite as enthusiastic is in the area of behavioral changes. Hugely important. Some behaviors aren't going to be changed. And so that's where my reluctance comes in. I'm concerned about a broad brush, broad stroke program that is going to be made available to, all users, whether on a system, not, well, the likes, and the efficiency and the effectiveness of the programs that we roll out. So I'm generally supportive of what's being proposed, but I don't think that a one-size-fits-all is necessarily going to work. So if we're going to be investing taxpayer dollars into these various incentives and programs, I want to make sure that they're effective in what they're targeted to, and that we can quantify and point to numbers that show the effectiveness. And I'll just use very quickly the wood stove rebate program. Initially, it wasn't that great a program because people could get rebates for wood stoves and inserts that they used maybe twice a year, where people that were burning 5 to 6 cords of wood a year couldn't even access them. So I know that that's changed and we look at consumption and the likes. I'd like to ensure that if we're moving forward with a program like this, that it's quantifiable, measurable, and efficient use of taxpayer dollars. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, through the chair too, Director Morrison, you raise a lot of really good points there, and some of the things that we have been considering. And one of the real struggles, and looking at the other programs, is figuring out the fairness around the funding for these programs. The big difference with the wood stove program is the majority of the funding for that comes from the province through BC Long. There are not many grants that we've been able to find that are out there that support this kind of rebate and incentive program. So that leaves us with the less desirable option of having to rely on our local taxpayers and requisition for that. Because of that, and because it's not, those funds would come from all residents and not just people that are connected to a community water system, then we do need to look at that. A lot of the other rebate programs that we have found across the province are funded from utility systems, whether it's stormwater or the drinking water side. But those examples tend to be in the larger municipalities where the vast majority of residents are connected to the systems and are paying into those utility fees. So we do have a challenge here with that, and that's why we are looking more broadly. Nanaimo, Regional District in Nanaimo, for example, they use a combination, some from utilities, but also some that are taxed. They use parcel tax instead of requisition, but the same idea. So we're still working on the details and happy to take that input into consideration when it comes to the eligibility for this.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I'm very supportive of this. I think this is, not only are we hopefully promoting water conservation, but just doing a program like this speaks exactly to what Director Morrison thinks we need to do, change everyone's behavior. So it raises the profile for everyone, because I don't think there's a, as Director McGonigal mentioned, there's a really solid understanding of our water scarcity issues and the way that we all need to contribute to changing the way we live and being much more water stewards as a sort of a standard way of living. So I like this program because it does that. I am interested, though, in what the cost of putting a meter on an individual's in an individual's home would be.
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, I'd have to look into that. Mr. Mooney, do you have any ballpark offhand? No. I can get an answer from utilities for that. I would imagine it depends to some extent on scale. But
So I just wondered if we could maybe tie, for people who, like I recognize the systems are on meters, but if we could tie rebates to also having to meter so you could see what water you're saving. But if it's a really expensive thing to do, we wouldn't be able to do it. But, if it's not a large cost, it seems to me that should be sort of a standard thing. We're encouraging people to meter their homes so they understand what their water use, and then provide them with targets of what we want people to get down to on water use. That's just an idea.
yeah, through the chair to Director Nicholson, thank you for that suggestion. And one of the challenges that we do come to is, again, the people that are on their private wells. And there's both the challenges is different technologies required to measure the water there, and the issues that Director Morrison alluded to in terms of reluctance to share that data with government. And we certainly recognize that is widespread. We've been looking at that more in the context of trying to get better understanding of aquifer health. It's something that the RDN also does in terms of supporting residents to install some of this monitoring equipment in a return for them agreeing to provide the data in a way that can be shared, not in a way they can be identified personally, but at least give us a better understanding of aquifer conditions. Because really understanding the effects of the individual wells and what we can learn about that aquifer gives us a fair bit of information.
Oh, yeah, so just to follow up. So I think that's a really important thing to do, and I'm really hoping the CVRD goes down that road to have volunteer wells that can be monitored to understand the aquifer health. What I'm talking about is just a simple, how much water are you using, which is different than how your level of aquifer, level of water in your well kind of thing. It's just how much water you're using, and I get that. I don't even think people need to share. It's just to encourage people to be aware of what they're using and try and limit it. Thank you.
Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much for your report. And I've been looking forward to this for a while now, and I'm interested in the comments that people have and how we provide education and feedback. And one of the things, I remember a study that was done. It was done what happened was there was a whole subdivision that they ended up putting the meters for the hydro right near the front door. And they ended up realizing that when they did that, they realized that the subdivision had a much lower consumption of energy. And they started doing some research into it and realized that it was because people were walking by that damn meter every day and watching it spin. And they realized that water meters are, the potential of how do you provide that visual feedback to somebody that walks to the door going how did I use 100 liters today? Or how did I use 500 liters? And it's trying to say, and that's the educational feedback part, that if we could come up with a solution or idea of encouraging people to say, do you want that kind of monitoring of your well? You didn't know you had a leak in your irrigation, didn't know you had this going on, or that running toilet was actually causing you this much loss. And so I think those kind of programs where you give people that, and not through an app, something that's sort of real and right in front of them. So I'm not sure how you do that. The other piece that I don't want to speak about all the things people have mentioned, but one of the things I'm also wondering, I'm sure it's crossed your mind, is how do you apply the information we know about climate change and our adaptations that we have to make, so people can say, okay, this is where we are today, but in 10 years, these are the things you want to start thinking about because your well might be dry. And there's areas in our region, in our regional district that are more susceptible than others. And so how do we target that piece out there so that we can provide that in advance so people start thinking about, yeah, I'm going to have to start thinking about my well is either going dry or so low that I can't get the things I want from it. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, through the chair to Director Martman. We do have a fair bit of information with our downscaled climate projections about what, in general terms, we can expect in future climate in terms of hotter, drier summers is the big one around that. And we are updating those climate projections this year, and we'll hope to get along with that a document that's going to tell us a bit more about how to understand and interpret those. There are some tools available that the province is developing. There's a landscape water calculator tool that we've been talking with one of our partners through the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program is the Partnership for Water Sustainability in BC, and they've approached us about possibly using that tool where property owners can basically play with different types of landscaping on their property and see what the effects are going to be on the water demand for that. And the plants can be tailored to this area. There's a similar one for agriculture on a larger scale to, I assume familiar with that in terms of being able to calculate the water demands for various crops. So there's some potential there to incorporate climate change factors into that so that if in the future the temperature is a couple of degrees warmer and there's so much less water available, then that changes the calculations within a tool like that. So definitely things we could explore.
And a follow-up, if I may?
Yeah, go for it.
I think the other one is in my area and my immediate neighbor, for example, I was speaking with him yesterday. He has a cistern, and he's having it cleaned out today. And so he does this on an annual basis. But one of the things that impacts him is making sure it's potable. And I noticed one of the things that's listed in that chart is about well testing. And so I think that's one of the things that for private well owners, having something that would help them offset those costs is important. So thanks.
All right, so the staff recommendation has been moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? None opposed, motion carries. So we have one more item here. I know it's getting close to lunch, so how about we maybe give it 10 minutes, see how far we get, and then figure out how to proceed from there? I'm hoping we can resolve this one, but worst case, and apologies to the chair of the board, but we may want to consider referring it to the board later this afternoon, unless we can make a quick decision on this one. Mr. Elzinga?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first thing I'd like to say regarding this report is my thanks to Ryan Wainwright in the Emergency Management Division. Ryan started this report. He's not able to complete. He's had some health challenges, and so I'd like to thank Ms. Miles Wilson for assisting me with the completion of this report. The background on the Emergency Warming Center for the 2024-2025 season is before you. The report outlines options for sheltering, and the way that we're doing it through emergency management is the least preferred option. The report outlines some trends with an increase in numbers in our unhoused community. It outlines what some other jurisdictions are doing to address winter sheltering. We have had some discussion with some other local government colleagues on the responsibility for winter sheltering, but CVRD staff are emphasizing that to access the BC housing criteria, the necessity of the recommendations that are outlined in the report. So those are the high-level highlights of the report. Here with Ms. Miles Wilson to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Olzenga. Any questions or comments from the committee? Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies if my math wasn't great, but I looked at the numbers and the nights open versus visits and the approximately $800,000 gross costs. And it appeared to me to be about $450 per visit and $7,766 per night open. And, clearly we have responsibilities in our community to, ensure people's safety and that they've got a place to be out of the weather. And, I'm not challenged by those numbers. But I think, given those numbers, if we're going to be spending those kinds of dollars, and I realize there's different levels of funding depending on what program you're participating in, but I think we can do better. So you've given us a least preferred option. You don't want to do that one again. I just sense that having a facility that is a dedicated facility it would be desirable, at least from my layperson's perspective. Is that going to be contained in what we're looking at voting on today? Will we end up with a site that is of a more fixed nature? Or am I completely out to lunch?
Mr. Olzenga.
Mr. Chair, if I may, through to Director Morrison, basically the first recommendation talks about the need to have some municipal staff support, and this is around bylaws, perhaps temporary use permit. It doesn't specifically say a facility, but I'm going to extend that recommendation to say that municipal staff may have some thoughts on that. So I think I can leave it at that.
Yep. Here, just give me a sec here. Go for it.
So, not for discussion today, essentially, which makes sense. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Justice.
So close. So this one really worried me and intrigued me, this report, and I find myself leaning against the suggested motion, as I understand it, and that's an open question whether I fully understand it. But in particular, what I believe is the suggestion that the management of warming shelters gets shifted away from the regional level. So you can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but otherwise I'll go on to say that I can certainly see the appeal to the CVRD and to a lot of board members of transferring the responsibility of shelters to those jurisdictions where they're greatly concentrated. But it does seem a logic that is fundamentally anti-regional. And to me, it seems similar to transferring the management of recreation facilities back to the municipalities, on the logic that most of the users of those facilities come from those bigger jurisdictions. But of course, people who need warming shelters are not necessarily from the communities that they're staying in. And I would think that a regional approach to warming shelters, similar to the regional approach to recreation, is important in terms of ensuring equitable use and also avoiding duplication of services and so on. So I do understand that warming shelters are difficult to manage and expensive to run, but I do think that a regional approach to that is probably in the end more efficient than doing it more locally, allowing funding of pooling of funding and staffing and so on. So if I'm understanding this implications of this correctly, I don't think I'm supportive of it. But I do have a question, actually, if I might add on to that, which is you did note in your report, Mr. Elzinga, that there was some comparison done, but the comparison that I saw in the report didn't really give me a full picture. So I mean, we know from the numbers of unhoused people and people using warming shelters that the CVRD, the capital region and the Nanaimo region are well ahead of us in terms of the growing numbers of people using these shelters. So how are they approaching this evolving situation? Do we know? And just generally, are there any effective examples out there to emulate about how these are being managed?
Mr. Elzinga or Ms. Miles-Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the second point, in other jurisdictions, we would have to do more investigation to really answer that one. I'd like to address the first point that Director Justice brought forward with the regional district and the appetite for dealing with this situation regionally. The regional district has limited regional options. And so really the regional option that we're using is emergency management under function 205. So we don't have that same level of service within the organization. So that's the regional approach that we've taken. We really have limited other options.
Director Segal.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm struggling in the same ways with this. I hear through reading the report loud and clear that CVRD emergency management staff are desperate for support. And they want to see a much more sustainable solution for our community, which I 100% agree with. And I hear that, in the recommendation, like CVRD staff looking for support from Muni staff to find those solutions. But I get how the wording kind of does seem exclusionary, like that, looking like it's just wanting to pass it back to the municipalities. So I guess I'm, hoping we can find a way where we all work together and we, create some utopia of perfect solutions for our community. Very optimistic that way. But I guess I wonder my question is regarding the funding that BC Housing will provide. I know we've had such a struggle with finding a location. Will BC Housing fund the construction of a new building for this purpose under this?
Ms. Miles-Wilson.
Okay, so I was going to go back to the previous question, but I'll just touch on this one in that I'm not sure if I can think of an example of funding of a construction, but definitely purchase of a building. I think at North Island, there was support of about $4 million to purchase a facility for a shelter. So that's definitely a recent case of their level of support, which is something that we could consider advocating for, something of that magnitude. But going back to the previous question that Director Justice had brought forwards about what are the other jurisdictions doing that have higher numbers of unhoused in their regional districts. In the report, it references a kind of myriad of local government responses, as you've already kind of reviewed, including zoning and temporary use permits. But Mr. Wainwright had noted in the report that other jurisdictions are budgeting significant contributions to non-government organizations to extend sheltering capacity. And so municipal staff in those contexts or local government staff are working in closely with those non-government organizations to prepare TUPs for decision of local government. And so I just wanted to emphasize and kind of build off of Mr. Elzinga's comments a little bit here is that our emergency management service has a big portfolio and a lot of initiatives to implement regarding emergency management in the Cowichan. And we all know the pressing issues in the social sphere in the community. And we are seeing a rising trend. And so we did want to bring this back to reflect on the fact that this does focus our staff in that area, and it is a growing need. We also have a very large work plan that we're trying to accomplish on the emergency management program, and there's needs on responding to floods and fires and everything else. And so we can't do it all. We can do it all if we have all the resources, but we don't. So that's kind of why we're putting it here, is that we need help. We need partnership. From our local government partners to solve this problem, and that's kind of why we're here. Okay, thanks.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I feel the same way. It seems to me we need a permanent facility, at least for the next probably 20 years, till we potentially catch up, if we can ever do that. And so I think that we need to be looking at how we can get there. And so an option around that would be really helpful at this point. So I would be interested in referring this back to staff to come back with something along those lines. I mean, you know, if we need to go to referendum to get more resources, then that's what we need to do. Or if we need to, you know, I just don't understand what the kinds of options that there might be for identifying and having a permanent facility that's focused on this issue. So I guess I'll make a referral motion unless you've got more speakers, I can wait.
Yeah, and I've got Director Staples next. Director Staples, do you have a preference? We get the referral on the floor now, or would you like to speak first?
I don't mind speaking first, if that's okay. I'm supportive of a referral, but
Can I come back to that in a moment then, Director Nicholson?
Yeah.
Okay. Director Staples.
Yeah, I hear what's being said by staff in this, and I also know that, you know, part of this whole process has been working together, so I'm a little bit surprised by this, to be quite honest. We don't have the resources at municipal tables either to deal with this, and this is a regional issue, and part of the struggle that we have, and it was really unfortunate that our, sorry, I'm going to just not say that. So part of the struggle that we have had in the past and that we still continue to have is that finding locations for these are significantly challenging, which we've been working for years to find a location for something like this. Needing to diversify where locations are, and this is why I think it has to stay in the house of the regional district, because we need to have, yes, central locations, but Lake Cowichan needs to have a location, Ladysmith needs to have a location, South Cowichan may potentially need to have a location, Cowichan Bay may need to have a location because of all the people, you know, camping out in boats and in RVs and all sorts of other things. So I feel like it has to stay with the regional district. I agree, it's underfunded, but it's underfunded everywhere. And as we've stated at this table before, the municipalities, particularly in this case, the city in North Cowichan, we bear the burden of this issue, and we're constantly advocating, working, you know, blamed for everything that happens in this region around this issue, and we understand that, and we continue to move forward. But we're way over maxed out on this as well. Everyone here knows how much we've been advocating to other levels of government. That will not stop. But to then pass this back to us, I can't support that. I do support us working together to find solutions and doing that. I support referendum of needing more money. I support us having, you know, some sort of huge campaign where we let every resident in the regional district know to send letters and emails every single day to other levels of government to address the need in our communities, and that other communities do the same. Because all of us are facing this underfunded, all of us are facing lack of capacity. But to go backwards, to me, this would be a step backwards. I would, I would like to see there, and again, listening to Director, Nicholson, Nicholson, the referral and wanting to come back with that information. I also recognize how challenging that is because everyone's been working on trying to find that place for years. And that place just simply doesn't exist right now. And that's going to take all of us to agree on whatever that location is in all of our communities, not a single location, in all of our communities, so that people can be cared for where they live. And so it's a way bigger conversation than this motion, and I don't at all feel comfortable supporting this in this fashion. I feel like there needs to be more, there needs to be something else that happens with representation from the board on a committee or something to look at this further, but I really don't think that this is how or where we should be doing this right now. So I won't be supporting this.
Thanks, Director Staples. And before I go back to Director Nicholson's suggestion, and we've got some more speakers here as well, I just want to build on your comments. I also share your views in terms of not supporting the recommendation. North Cowichan is in a similar position to the City of Duncan in that we're dealing with the impacts of the homelessness and opioid crisis on a day-to-day basis. We figure we're spending about $15,000 a day managing these issues, which maybe for City of Vancouver isn't a lot, but for a municipality of under 35,000 people, it's a big impact on our finances, on our taxpayers. And we simply do not have the capacity or the resources to take on the role of leading this process in terms of finding that winter warming shelter. The other point I want to make is I do take staff's point about emergency management couch, and this is viewed as being beyond the scope of what they've outlined in their work plan. And I think we've really got to change our own thinking, not just at the staff level, but around the committee table, the board as well, about what we define as an emergency that we're going to respond to. I think the traditional thinking around that is that you've got wildfires, droughts, flooding that you would have your emergency management staff responding to. And I think a lot of folks who sign up for work in this field, that's kind of what they envisioned when they embarked on that career path. But what we're increasingly seeing over the past decade is that not just here in the Cowichan region, but right across North America, communities are grappling with this opioid crisis and growing levels of homelessness. Even if you look at the stats and the staff report, the estimate's over 600 people currently unhoused in the Cowichan region, which I think if you went back 10 years ago and told folks that's what we had in store for our future, it would have been unthinkable, but here we are today. The last point here is with regards to, and just building on some of the previous comments as to whether we should take the more local or regional approach. And for me, this is a regional issue. Certainly most of the 600 plus unhoused people are located in City of Duncan, in the core area, North Cowichan, and also in Cowichan Tribes land as well. But many of these folks, they come from all corners of the Cowichan Valley Regional District. And I think if we take a more regional approach in addressing this, we're going to be a lot more successful because it'll allow us to pool together our resources. I understand the point made by staff about some of the emergency management staff may not have the expertise or the skill set to be tackling these complex social issues. And, if there is a desire to explore how we can expand some of those resources, I'd certainly be willing to consider that as part of the budgeting process. I think all of us want to do what we can to limit any tax increases on our local residents, but I think most of our residents would agree that if we can make a difference in terms of saving some lives this winter in terms of the most vulnerable residents of our community, it makes sense to put a bit more resources into that area. But I would like to go back to the suggestion from Director Nicholson, and we do have some wording here. If I could just run by you, Director Nicholson, to see if this captures your suggestion. But the motion would be that we refer item R5 back to staff to prepare a report with options for identifying a permanent location or locations for a temporary winter shelter or an emergency weather response shelter that could be funded through BC Housing. So just throwing that out there, Director Nicholson, would you like to comment on that? Is that sort of what you had in mind?
Sort of, having listened to Director Staples, we need to figure out a way of moving forward together on this regionally. And we also need to figure out a way of making sure we've got the resources to move forward. So there's sort of two different pieces there. And I imagine that there is a collaborative kind of process that needs to happen to move together. And then the financial stuff is probably, we're probably in a good position as local governments to provide the leverage to get to make sure the funding is in place. So I kind of think of those two things a little bit differently, and I don't see in that motion maybe the process piece. And yeah, and I don't know whether we can include the fact that BC Housing will for sure come to the party, because if they don't, we are going to have to look at another option. So I think that's a little constraining. Off the top of my head.
How about, I've got some other speakers here. I can come back to you,
Yes.
Director Nicholson and Director Staples, if you have some ideas on how we might want to word a motion. Director Kallio.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to echo what Mayor Staples said, and also the Chair and others at the table. This is an emotional and empathetic subject, and we need to approach it with that in mind. But also, when you're sitting at the council table for North Cowichan and then you come to the board table here, it's hard to take the North Cowichan out of me, because I do represent those people at this table. Myself, I see this as a regional issue, not just an issue for the city of Duncan and the municipality of North Cowichan. I mean, yes, most of what's happening with the homeless is centered on York Street in North Cowichan, but we all need to work together to try and to solve this. And I'm not in support of this motion either. Yes, we need a homeless shelter, a permanent shelter. That would be the ultimate situation. Where that would be located, I suspect that probably would be pushed to be down in the York Street area, where the majority of the situation is. But on a daily basis, as a councillor for North Cowichan, we have residents in that area and also from around the community contacting us and expecting us to manage a situation that in all reality is not something that we should even be dealing with. I mean, even the board table here, us discussing this this is to my and we've been pushing for the senior levels of government, but this is a senior level of government issue. And what they've done is they've downloaded it onto us. And I know people hear that all the time, but that's the absolute fact of it, is that, we don't have the resources to deal with this. At North Cowichan, as the chair said, we spend $15,000 on average every day looking after this, and that's money that could go to other things. And granted, we have to do that. We have to have empathy for the people in the corridor and in the areas all around our regional district. Those people need to have a warming center in the winter and a cooling center in the summer. So totally in support of that, but at the same time, I can't be in support of what's this motion here.
Thanks. Thank you, Director Kallio. I'm now going to turn to Director Stash.
Thank you, Chair. I won't speak to any of the points just made at all, because they were made well, and I support what was said with regards to the existing burden on the municipalities. Actually, I just wanted to bring more light to Director Staples' comments on, I'm trying to recall myself, I don't really have seen any education or awareness other than press releases from the CVRD on the role that as a region we bear a responsibility for the emergency warming shelters in winter. So I really do think there needs to be that educational point from staff and from our communications, and in timely that we just had a social media presentation earlier. We need to start doing some awareness and education, saying that everybody in the regions from all corners has a part to play in this, and that part to play is done, that the CVRD is taking the role of emergency management. With that, if it's after this, I don't know if it's appropriate to make a motion, but I just scrolled through the April 28, 2025 newsletter, and there's no mention of the role of emergency management with a warming shelter. I think this report that we just got would make a timely paragraph in the May 2025 newsletter from the CVRD saying that we impacted 1,775 unique individuals over 100 days this past season, and probably saved lives thanks to the support of all residents of the regional district. So once this motion that is currently on the floor, I'd like to put forward a motion, if appropriate, or I don't know how we do that here, just we can just plant that seed with staff. I think we should say something in the May newsletter saying that the regional district is playing a role, and that put a bit of a good news story out there, how many people were saved. And that is following, again, back to what Director Staples said, we only hear the bad news and the burden and the attacks on North Cowichan and on City of Duncan, and actually on the town of Ladysmith gets their fair share of poor publicity, even though they're taking great strides, as we see them mentioned in the report here. So my comment is on that education awareness part, that we have a role as a regional district, and it's just not the municipalities.
Thanks, Councillor Stash. I'll now turn to Director Morrison. So did I call you Councillor, Director?
You got it right.
All right.
Thank you, Chair, and perhaps I was a little confused earlier because I thought I'm thinking back to all of the discussions that we've had and the angst that we've gone through. And I recognize as a passionate electoral area director that this is definitely a regional issue. We're responsible for each and every single resident or person in our community. So, whatever we get to in the way of a referral motion, it's my desire that we do it regionally. It's all hands on deck, municipal and regional district staff, that we purchase a site or build a site. We have maximum other order of government funding, contracted operations provider, if need be, creation of a function, and we do, as just previously mentioned, we do need public relations and education work done as well, because it doesn't help if it's just us and the people immediately impacted that know about this. If we want everybody to participate in the solution, everybody needs to be aware of what we're facing and what we're trying to get done here. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Director Morrison. I'm just going to turn to the corporate officer who has a suggested motion here that's, I think, general enough to capture all the comments we've heard so far.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the discussion. And I'm just listening a little bit attentively and trying to draft a recommendation. So I have it that it be recommended at today's board meeting on May 14th that CVRD staff work with member municipalities to collaborate and work on a procedure on how to move forward with requesting funding in support to establishing a temporary winter shelter or extreme weather response shelter, and report back.
Okay, we'll leave that hanging out there for a moment. I've got a speakers list. I'm going to go Director Martman, Wilson, then Staples. Yeah.
Sorry, okay, this item is far too important to, we need to take lots of time over this one. And we're at the point where I particularly need to get some sustenance inside me, and I'm sure others are the same. So can we at least take a 10-minute or 15-minute break, grab some food, and come back and talk about it?
We've got two more speakers. Could we just get through the next two? Because if we get through the next two, we might pass this motion here, then we're done, we can eat. And if not, then I think we can take the break. How's that
Okay.
for compromise?
Okay.
All right,
I need to eat.
all right. Okay, Director Martman, and then Director Staples, and then let's figure out if we want to pass the motion or take a break.
You know, I hear, but I'm not going to repeat anything. I think there's a couple of things I just wanted to bring up. One is whether we should be severing some of these items in here because there's some aspects to it that might be worth not throwing out the window with the bathwater. The other piece is around whatever path we're going to go down with this referral or a motion that's made. We should also be thinking about this winter, because one thing is going to lead to a much longer time frame to get us to a solution, and yet we're going to have a winter coming. So we can't ignore that too, and so I don't know how to put the right motion forward, but we need to be considering that. Chair, thanks.
Yeah, Ms. Miles Wilson. Sorry, give me a sec here.
So I just wanted, you have a motion that's been read, and it's related, I just wanted to provide a little bit of additional information to remind everyone that we did facilitate a very comprehensive interjurisdictional mapping process last year. And we can redistribute that information just so it's top of mind. We had an external party help us with that, and we identified many locations and worked with staff the CVRD, external consultants, and municipal staff. And we were not able to find a location that we could seek proper zoning or permitting for per se, and which is why we landed on the temporary emergency response behind the Ramada. And as noted, that is becoming a very expensive model, growing in expense. We will have a report on what we're able to recover from the province, but because we were open so many days, it's definitely an escalating expense, the most expensive option. So we are encouraging to proceed with something that we could get funded through BC Housing, which would be something that would be funded each day that it's open. Just wanted to emphasize that point.
Great, thanks, Ms. Miles Wilson. I'm going to turn to Director Staples as the last speaker on this, but if I could just mention to the committee, I think we have a couple options here. One is we could pass a motion which would go on the board agenda for this afternoon, so we'll get another chance to discuss it shortly. The other option is we just refer the entire item to the board for discussion this afternoon, in which case we can consider the motion, this motion or a different one this afternoon. But yeah, those are a couple options. There could be others as well, but I'm going to turn to Director Staples.
Thank you. I think that the option to refer to this afternoon is better because there's again, just recognizing that everybody does need a break and that this is a big issue, and because there's things that are missing in this motion. One, it talks about one permanent location. As has been mentioned, we need to ensure that we've got the 25, 26 temporary, and there's not one location. Going back to what I said earlier, the issue is too large in our community for there to be one centralized location. There needs to be multiple locations throughout the region, and I didn't hear that in that motion either. And I also did not hear mention of Cowichan tribes in that motion. And again, as one of our largest community neighbors, partners, that they have to be a part of this process. And again, that may require for there to be yet maybe two options or different options. Basically what I'm trying to say is I don't want to limit our options, and I feel like that motion limits our options. So I would like to defer this to this afternoon so we can work on that, on making sure that referral motion covers what I've heard people talking about today, and some pieces that are missing. And I just want to really thank the emergency management team, because I know how much you did on this, sitting in on a lot of those meetings in just the planning processes. And I recognize the challenge here, and I thank you for bringing this forward. And again, until this is resolved, with actual investment into taking people off the streets, we are going to be dealing with balancing this, and we have to do that regionally. We can't break it up again. It took us too long to get to the point where we were starting to do it regionally. I think we need to strengthen that and give you more support. But I feel like that's really important. But again, thank you very much, because I know how hard this is.
Director Staples, would you like to refer this for further discussion at the board meeting this afternoon? Seconded by Director Segal. Call the question. All in favor? And opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. We can now move on to question period. Turn to the gallery, ask if there's any members of the public with a question for the committee. None? All right. We'll move on to adjournment. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Director Morris, seconded by Director Estache. All in favor? And opposed? Not opposed. Motion carries. Declare this meeting adjourned.